Bishop soon became an enthusiastic broadcaster himself. But not even the Archbishop of Canterbury's place at the microphone could be guaranteed.
The crisis. All efforts at compromise between the Trade Union Council and the government regarding the position in the coalfields have failed. We regret to have to announce that a general strike will begin tomorrow at midnight.
With the general strike in 1926, the country appeared to be teetering on the brink of violent revolution. The Archbishop of Canterbury initially and instinctively came out against the strike, but on the fourth day of the crisis he received a delegation of leading Christian socialists, including Prebendary Kirk, the chairman of the Industrial Christian Fellowship.
They have breakfast with him, and over breakfast they persuade him that this is a much more complex issue. Davidson is very worried from what he hears about the damage that this is doing to the social fabric. So he decides, completely against what really is all his own instincts, to go for a much more moderate line.
Davidson's line took the form of an appeal for both sides to back down and negotiate. With Fleet Street all but silent, there was an obvious way to send his message.
Davidson needed no persuasion about the power of radio, and he saw this as the ideal opportunity to test that. He felt that as Archbishop of Canterbury, he had a right to be on the radio. What actually happened was that Reith refused him.
Instead, the BBC carried the words of the Roman Catholic primate Cardinal Bourne, who pronounced the strike
a sin against the obedience which we owe to God and against the charity and brotherly love which are due to our brethren.
Davidson's appeal for moderation was also censored by the British Gazette, the government newspaper edited by Winston Churchill. The Archbishop of Canterbury had been effectively muzzled.
There was a feeling that when the chips were down, that the church had not delivered the goods. And this is as true of Churchill in the 1920s as it was to be true later with Thatcher in the 1980s.
The rejection of the Church's right to intervene in the general strike came as a blow to the Christian socialist clergy of the ICF. In the face of openly declared class war, their fraternal ideals began to look unworldly and unachievable. Even their figurehead, Woodbine Willie, began to wonder if he had really achieved anything. But the Crusades continued.
He would arrive with a programme sent out by headquarters, and then he would find when he got to a particular place that they, either through public demand or because they thought there was an extra chance, they slipped in another engagement. I think it's true to say that they had a willing workhorse, and they took advantage of him.
He was a star turn without a doubt, yeah, and they worked him into the ground on it too. He was a frail man, he didn't have good health, and they were happy to see him exhaust himself spreading the message, because he did it very effectively.
In 1929, at a meeting in Liverpool, Studart Kennedy caught pneumonia.
I can remember then my mother setting off with our local doctor late at night, and they drove through the night to Liverpool, but arrived too late. He died before she arrived.
The death of Woodbine Willie marked the end of an era. He epitomised both the ambition and the shortcomings of the church in the 20s, with his burning desire to create a better world and his utopian belief that political conflict could be avoided if everyone just got along together as Christians. But if, in the polarised climate of the 1920s, the middle way of Christian socialism was doomed to failure, there would come a time later when it would dominate the political landscape. Many of the public expected Woodbine Willie to be buried in Westminster Abbey, but the Dean refused on the grounds that he'd been a socialist. So the body was taken to Worcester, where thousands of ordinary people lined the streets to say goodbye to their hero. Among the mourners was Rhoda Mansell.
The cemetery was absolutely full. Some of the old soldiers that remembered and loved him, they threw packets of woodbines down on top of his coffin.